Okay, so let's talk about your upcoming surgery. Inside of your throat, there is an organ called the larynx. And just for reference, this is your esophagus, that's where food goes. This part right here, the entire thing is your larynx. You may have heard it called the voice box. And the reason it's referred to as the voice box is because the vocal folds live there. And you may have heard these referred to as vocal cords. So the vocal folds, right here, are thin strips of elastic muscle tissue, and they stretch horizontally across your larynx. The vocal folds serve several functions. They play a part in respiration, swallowing, and speaking. So if I took a camera and looked downward and looked at your vocal folds, we would get an image that looks something like this. So this part being your esophagus, this part being your trachea. These are the vocal folds. So in this image, the vocal folds are open, and that means that you're breathing. They're open for respiration. They allow air to move from the lungs and back into the lungs. When you're swallowing, the vocal folds look like this. They're closed. They're one of the things that protects your airway when you're swallowing. The vocal folds also play a big part in speaking. So, when you're speaking, your vocal folds are opening and closing and vibrating together. While you're doing this, air is being pushed up through your lungs, and that driving force is what makes your vocal folds vibrate. And as long as you maintain that respiratory support, they're vibrating. That creates phonation. That's the sound that you hear when you speak or sing. So your papilloma or abnormal tissue growth is right here, and that's on your left vocal fold, the edge of it. And you could imagine that it gets in the way when you're speaking. Your vocal folds can't vibrate at the pattern that they normally would. And that means that they're rubbing together abnormally, and they're allowing unmodulated amounts of air through. And that's why you're experiencing hoarseness and breathiness. So, when you have surgery, that papilloma will be removed, and that will allow your vocal folds to vibrate together at their normal rate again, go back to their normal vibrating pattern. It avoids damage, and it's also important because if that papilloma continued to grow, it could begin to obstruct the airway and you could have trouble breathing. And so after surgery, what we want to do is give you 2 weeks of vocal rest. Vocal rest means that you're not speaking or singing. And when you're not speaking or singing, your vocal folds are not vibrating together, not making contact, and you're giving that left vocal fold some well-deserved rest after your surgery.